a stepping stone to, let's say, for example, Florida. But
I mean, it's tough because Oregon revitalizing the program and almost giving them new life. Oregon's got a very large following, not just in Oregon, but they have a very large cult following. I mean, there's
because of the giant cards.
Well, it's the giant cards.
I would
it's
say
the
it's
uniforms.
partially the jerseys.
I mean,
yeah.
they never
That
wear
partnership
something
with Nike.
twice. Their field, I don't know if you've seen it recently, that checkered pattern where they go dark grass, light grass.
Yeah.
Or everything in Oregon's got to be different. It's got to be unique. It's got to be over the top. And if you can get them going back in the right direction, popularity may be there for them to be able to succeed. I could see Oregon being one of those programs that fans do want to root for to go into the NCAA Final Four for football or the college football playoff or however they want to classify it. Or God knows if they'll expand, because I still believe they should.
They better. Better.
We're on the same agreement here. More the merrier. Let's make it chaos.
Here's my argument, though. Oregon's not going to get the same level of players they had under Chip Kelly. You're not going to get LeGarrette Blount. You're not going to get LaMichael James. You're not going to get...
Well, they've got Royce Freeman already, who's about to break LaMichael James's record.
Yeah, but LaMichael James was like... you just have to watch him to understand what LaMichael James is. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, but that's how it plays out. It's a lot of it's going to be dependent on how well he does coaching there, how successful they are. Are you in the spotlight? Does it bring back this mystique that it was to be playing for Oregon? It's hard to say who and what talent they will get. I will say it's going to be interesting to watch it play out because, I mean, we'll find out quickly looking at their schedule. Yeah. Nebraska,
yes.
The second week of their schedule.
You were talking about Nebraska before, and I had the same thoughts in my head. They're a great team.
That's a quick one to find out who are you.
Yeah.
Yeah, so let's just run down their schedule really quick. I got it right here. They start with Southern Utah. That's a win.
Yep.
They then play Nebraska in Oregon, so that'll be tough. They play Wyoming. Wyoming was tough. They weren't the best team in the Mountain West, but they were tough. So I wouldn't put it past Wyoming.
Depending on the spread, I'll take Wyoming.
Yeah, and it's in Wyoming. So
that means nothing to me. You know how close Wyoming is to Oregon.
Then they go to Tempe to play against Arizona State. That should be a really good game. I think Oregon could take it.
Yeah, those couple of games will really say what direction they're heading in, because they should start off pretty strong because they've got a tough end of the season. But keep going. Good
news though for Oregon. We'll get to it as we go along. They get to play Cal without Davis Webb. Mm-hmm. So that's true. That's good. Good for them. Then they have to go to they don't go to. They play Washington State, who has I think my favorite quarterback in college football, Luke Falk. So I think he's going to throw all over Oregon, unfortunately.
What was their rank last year? Oregon's defense, like 126th.
So wasn't good.
Yeah.
They're going to get thrown all over by everybody. They just have to try and outscore them.
Yeah, then they play Stanford. Stanford's not that great. Then they go to Pasadena, California to take on Josh Rosen and UCLA. Hopefully Josh Rosen can stay healthy because he's another NFL quarterback. Mm-hmm. Then they get Utah in Oregon, which Utah's a good team. They were definitely very good last year. Then they get to go to Seattle to play against Washington.
That's going to be a tough game.
Yeah, that's going to be a tough one.
Washington, who, I mean, I was the biggest Washington naysayer, probably because I thought Penn State should have gotten in the playoffs. But they did give Alabama a tough time in that playoff game. So Jake Browning's only getting better. So that's going to be fun to watch. Then they get to play in Oregon for their last two games, Arizona and then Oregon State. Now,
those are both tough, I think.
I think
Arizona's a good team, and Oregon State is always, it's that
fun.
Civil War game. So
it's that rivalry.
Who could win it?
You never toss anything out the window in a rivalry. It can go either way.
We're going to play a quick game right now. Who's the one team in the Pac-12 that I didn't say that they don't have to play?
That's a good question.
I'll give you the answer. University of Southern California. They don't play USC.
Talk about luck of the draw as far as who you don't play this season. Wow.
Right?
That is a blessing.
Sam Darnold doesn't get to go. Doesn't get to throw all over.
He would break so many records against their defense. I mean, I'm expecting some kind of turnaround, especially for 4-8.
They're fun to watch.
But, yeah, they've always been more of an offensive team. So, they're just going to try and I'm going to John Madden here. They're just going to try and score more points than their opponents.
I was trying to think of my favorite Oregon player, and it was escaping me. Kenyon Barner. He was fun to watch.
Yeah,
I loved watching him. He was great.
Great player.
All right, so going away from our favorite teams now, we came up with a few different games, some of us more than a few, non-conference games that we're looking forward to watching. Tony?
I've got a couple. There's a lot that happened in the beginning of the year. I think 2 neutral site matchups that are going to be entertaining in week 1. FSU against Alabama will be an entertaining game to watch. I believe that one's being played in Georgia.
Alabama's just so boring to watch.
They could be, but exposure earlier in the year, it could be something where the Seminoles actually are able to pull it off. I'm also looking forward to seeing Michigan against Florida to start off the year. Again, neutral site.
That's one of the ones that I have.
Obviously, we already talked about Ohio State and Oklahoma in week 2. I think that's going to be an entertaining game. Clemson-Auburn never seems to disappoint. Those two seem to hate each other endlessly, so I always enjoy their games. Pitt and Penn State we talked about. I'm looking forward to that rematch. I want to see it happen again. Another one that I find unique, considering talking about Pitt and Penn State, is for the first time since 2005, Virginia Tech is going to take on West Virginia.
That's one of the ones that I have highlighted for what I think is going to be fun. 2 completely different styles. You got a strong West Virginia team and a tough Virginia Tech team.
Mm-hmm.
Virginia Tech is more of a ground and pound kind of team. West Virginia is more of a run and gun kind of team. As we've seen, West Virginia, Geno Smith was their quarterback. So they recruit.
That.
He was great at West Virginia. He was great at West Virginia.
He could still surprise some people.
No, he can't.
He can still surprise.
I mean, he surprised me by getting a job. So I definitely have that one as well.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any others?
Ones that I'm looking forward to seeing as well. I want to see. We want to test for Herman, Texas against USC. You'll find out who he is. I have a feeling, given the talent that USC, if they can play to who they were earlier in this or later in last season, like we were talking about, it's probably going to be a slaughter.
Yeah, I think USC probably wins that by 40 points.
It's possible, but it's going to be really Herman's true test. Where are you here? What are you doing with this program? How do you conduct yourself? Also, Georgia against Alabama. I'm actually think that Georgia's going to surprise a lot of people this season and be very good.
Nick Chubb.
I'm big fan of Nick Chubb. I think he's a great running back. And one that I'm just throwing out there for kind of, shades of Appalachian State. Arkansas State against Miami.
You think
Miami
Arkansas
has
State...
to go to Arkansas State, and Arkansas State has 6 consecutive winning seasons. And I bet you it will be overlooked. Depending on that spread, I'm putting my money on it.
Got your money on that. All right. I've got a few that I'm really interested in. One that I thought you might say when you brought up Texas, but I'll get to that in a minute. LSU versus BYU. LSU without Leonard Fournette. BYU is an enigma. I was talking about Illinois earlier, being like you don't know what you get. BYU is the same thing, but it's more like a wonder ball. Like you break into this chocolate and you don't know what kind of awesomeness you're going to get.
Mm-hmm.
You're either going to get a good defensive game or you're going to get a good offensive game. Either way, it's going to be fun to watch. Plus, Bronco Mendenhall is probably the coolest head coach name ever.
That's a pretty awesome head coach name, yeah. BYU, I did look at that game. That game should be a lot more interesting than I think most people would glance at it on the screen and pass over it.
Yeah, I had the Florida versus Michigan. Here we go with the Texas one, Maryland versus Texas. I think that's going to be like a season-stealing game. I think that's going to be just so much fun to watch. Like I said, you got an up-tempo Maryland. You've got a strong special teams Maryland team. You've got a team that, going toe-to-toe with Penn State last year, has confidence. So seeing them play against Texas, I think, is going to be good for them. This, I think, will be Herman's better. What's the word I'm looking for?
Showing.
Yeah, I think this is a better litmus test.
Yeah, test.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing that is probably going to be a closer game, too, is the fact that Herman has an idea of Maryland. I mean, he was coaching with Ohio State for their first national title in the college football playoff era. So he knows Maryland pretty well. So I think it's really going to be a true test of what this Maryland team really is and how Herman can actually get these people together to play for this Texas team, because he's going to. I mean, Texas has.
They lost to Kansas. They lost to Kansas. That doesn't happen. That does not happen.
I get it, and that's why he's been hired.
And that's why Charlie Strong has been fired.
I think you're right with Maryland being on the upswing. I'm going to go ahead and say now they're my favorite for that game.
Me too. I'm totally taking Maryland to win that game.
Yeah. And, you know, I've heard before, I don't know if you guys have heard this, but along with crab cakes, football is what Maryland does.
I believe
they're more of a basketball school.
Yeah, but I'm pretty sure that's what Maryland does.
Yeah, football and crab cakes. That's what Maryland does.
And turtles. Fear the turtles. Maryland basketball.
You gotta see Wedding Crashers.
Yeah.
I haven't seen Wedding Crashers.
That's why you're not getting the reference.
I'm not getting the reference.
To our listeners.
Nope. I apologize. I apologize. I don't like crappy Vince Vaughn movies. I apologize, guys. But
it's actually a gem.
It's a gem.
It's a gem.
Yeah, like one of those really
Owen Wilson is a saint!
It's one of those dirty gems you got to polish real hard to make it look nice.
Lock it up.
All right. But Maryland, I think, will be the biggest surprise team in college football. I wouldn't be surprised if they get to 9 or 10 wins this season.
It's possible. I'd have to look at Maryland's schedule again, but I could see them winning 9 to 10 games.
It's not pretty, but again, their team ain't pretty.
Like I said, I believe that Georgia is going to be a powerhouse this year that nobody sees coming up. I mean, they'd had they were definitely in the top 5 and number 3 recruiting class overall this year. They've got a lot of talent coming in. They were right behind Alabama and Ohio State in recruiting this year. So, for whatever it is, everyone wants to go to Georgia now.
Okay. Yeah, I always like to think Georgia has a chance at being the team to beat. Not just a team to beat, the team to beat.
I would like to throw it out there. I mean, as we get to week 1, I think that one thing that we should do is try and come up with our 4 that we think are going to be there at the end.
Yeah.
Who do we think it's going to be? Who do we think plays for the title? And who do we think wins it?
I've pretty much laid out my 4.
Yeah, of course. Penn State wins the whole thing.
No, actually, I don't think Penn State's going to win the whole thing. Not yet.
No?
Not yet.
You just give them another year or 2?
Yeah. Okay. When we get to the 2018 recruits, that's when I think you're really going to start seeing Penn State be a factory for NFL talent and winning championships. But I do have one more game that I think is going to be a lot of fun to watch, and that's Cal versus North Carolina. The reason I think it's going to be fun to watch, you're going to see 2 teams that were underachievers who are losing their star quarterback. Cal losing Davis Webb. North Carolina losing Mitchell Trubisky.
Right.
So I'm really interested to see how both of those teams will rebound, losing their star signal caller.
It could be an interesting game just for the sake of the 2 new quarterbacks. I mean, that may be one of the more entertaining games to watch because it could turn into complete chaos.
Yeah, it certainly could.
And that's why I love college football. I mean, give me as much nonsense happening at one time. Just keep me entertained.
The best thing that I think I've ever seen in college football happened in the Fiesta Bowl, Boise State beating Oklahoma. Not because I hate Oklahoma, which I do, but because it's absolutely ridiculous that you win because you score a touchdown on a hook and ladder, and then you win because you get the 2-point conversion on a Statue of Liberty.
Yeah, well, my favorite, obviously, for me, goes for the Ohio State. When they won the Fiesta Bowl, I believe, it was Tempe against Miami. One, because of the players. That's the game McGahee blew out his knee. Mm. That was Maurice Clarett, you had